The UK is about to go down a dangerous track. The current Prime Minister and his herd, perhaps his drove of lackeys are desperate to implement a new digital ID system that they claim will solve all of merry old England's ills. Now, there's already been a lot of skepticism and criticism of this idea, as well there should be, but there's also a major problem with this whole digital ID concept that I haven't heard anybody bring up quite yet. So we're going to look at 5 big reasons why this digital ID scheme is bad, and let's move pretty quickly. We're going to start with the smallest complaint, the fact that it's going to have a gigantic price tag. Now, the reason that we can assume this is because, well, building this system will be hideously expensive because England has already tried to build this system once. Back in 2006, they wanted a digital ID system that was slightly different because it predated certain devices. And back then, the population was only 60 million people. But even so, it was a 5 or 6 billion pound failure, which the people resented. And they resist it. Now, we have much more advanced devices now, but we also have a larger population. The UK's population is now about 10 million more people, and the people's trust in government is considerably lower. The increase in population and decrease in trust, those are actually related, by the way, and we will get to that shortly. Now, I'm not just criticizing the UK's government technology programs. Most governments are terrible at technical implementations. Our federal government, if you can recall, spent 3 years and $2 billion to build a website, healthcare.gov. And at launch, only 6 people were able to set up accounts. Now, technically, they made the website a little bit better, but they also made healthcare in general considerably worse. Now, over in the UK, I'm confident that the bureaucrats will not be able to build a fast, efficient, trustworthy digital ID system. And speaking of trustworthy, that brings us to problem number 2. Not only are government technical services expensive and clunky, they are also insecure. There is a long history of massive failures in this respect across the globe. And probably the biggest failure, the most famous, also right here in the United States, the Office of Personnel Management. This lost all of its data to hackers in the year 2015. Now, it's important to know what the Office of Personnel Management keeps. It isn't the boring private citizen data like yours or mine. This was government employee data. We're talking about military personnel. We're talking about intelligence personnel. We're talking about over 21 million government employees and contractors who had all of their data exposed. And I'm not just talking about, phone numbers, personal addresses. I'm talking about their security check data, their clearance data, their background information, their fingerprints, the information on their relatives and associates. This is the most sensitive information that the government has to keep. If you'll recall, this is literally the plot of Mission Impossible 1, and in real life, the Chinese hackers got away with it. Now, private companies might be a little bit better at valuing the data. Maybe they're a little bit better at accountability for people who lose data. It's hard to say because they don't have the best track records either. The bigger issue is that mandatory government services like digital ID collect everybody's data, and then all of the data is centralized. So, in 2022, the Shanghai National Police Database was breached, and it contained data on about 1 billion people. And then in 2023, the very next year, India's digital ID system was compromised, and yeah, again, over 1 billion people had their identification, various biometric data, and a lot of their banking data completely exposed. So centralization is one of the issues, and it has a number of weaknesses. One of them is when the system is insecure, but the other is when the system fails. Now, the whole point of this digital ID system, for the UK anyway, is in theory to limit access to government services and private employment to only UK citizens. And let's pretend, just for a minute, that we believe that. That is what it will be used for. If that is the case, then it will be impossible to have access to certain government services or private employment when the system fails. And it will fail. We've already determined that when it comes to government technology, there will be problems. And if it becomes truly impossible to conduct business without the government permitting it through the system, then the outages could be really detrimental to individuals and the larger economy. Now, the impact of those outages will depend on the extent to which employers and other services are dependent on this digital app data. Some of my concerns probably sound like speculations at this point, because exactly how the digital ID will be designed and implemented, it's still pretty in the dark. It's not something that has been developed transparently. It's not something that has been developed using a lot of outside input. It's not something that the public knows much about, and so we don't have a whole lot of details. For example, we do know that it's not going to be a card like the identification cards that Britain already issues. It isn't the sort of insurance papers that Britain already requires to do all of the things that the digital ID is supposed to solve. It's going to be some level of app-focused thing. It's going to have two-way communication to government servers. It's probably going to involve biometric data. It's probably going to allow some kind of two-way communication between the person applying for the job, the person giving the job. It's probably going to be a bunch of stuff that gets tacked on at the end, and we will cover that. But we know enough about the details to know that this won't be limited to just one-time verifications when you're hired the first time or when you sign up for the dole the first time. We're going to see considerable mission creep. Anytime a tool is built that has multiple uses, the civil service is desperate to use all parts of the tool, in the name of efficiency, of course. This is the only time the civil service actually care about efficiency, but never mind all that. In the United States, our social security numbers were supposed to never be used for identification, and they've kind of become the main human identifier over here. Traffic cameras that we were told were only going to be used to program and trigger traffic lights are now being used to track the physical locations of cars and issue tickets. Mission creep is kind of unavoidable without strong boundaries and a citizenry that will keep its government in check. This digital ID won't just be a QR code that you can scan one time. This two-way authorization server is going to be really tempting for people who want to track you clocking in for work. And then once it does that, it might as well see your paycheck data because, well, after all, the Inland Revenue Department has to get your taxes out of there somewhere. The only thing that we know for sure this digital ID system won't be is the mark of the beast. That's because I'm pretty confident Revelations 13 that talks about the beast is talking about Nero, or possibly Domitian. But that's eschatology, and it's probably the subject of another video. But every emperor before Nero, every emperor after Nero who has wanted to build tyrannical power has wanted to centralize authority and control. And so any tool or technology that can be used this way will be something that tyrants attempt to capitalize on. And once the Brits have this perfect digital ID that can be used for tracking people physically, their government is also going to want to use it for tracking online activity. After all, this will be the ultimate tool for age verification on the web, which is a major conversation right now pretty much everywhere. This will be the ultimate tool to take Europe, and the UK specifically, from a voluntary decentralized web to a mandatorily centralized web. And the UK government has shown that it is desperate to track online activity, mainly because so much online activity these days, including this video, is critical of the UK government. Now at this point, if you're very pessimistic, you might say, it's kind of too late. Everything is already tracked online by everyone. Every IP address, every ad, every device, every purchase, every meme that is shared is being tracked. All of our data is being collected, harvested, sold, mined. So who really cares about another collection vector? And you kind of have a point, but I will make the point that things get much worse when there is a central database, and when that central database is run by the government itself. Which brings us to problem number 5. This is the big one. This is the one that is rarely talked about. The centralization of these digital IDs under the umbrella of the government will destroy the presumption of innocence. So to explain why this happens, let's draw the system as it works now, and then how it might work with a digital ID system kind of overarching the whole thing. This right here is you, and you want to buy a holster from T-Rex Arms, this website over here. At the moment, yes, your information is being tracked as you visit the website on your phone. Your phone is providing information to AT&T and various other service providers that you might be using at the time. And possibly Google Chrome is tracking things for, product development, and they're capturing little bits of data along the way. But most of the information is encrypted using SSL certificates. You are able to, your connection to T-Rex Arms is logged by your service providers. But what you're actually doing on the website is invisible. It's encrypted, and all of the data that we record about sales is on our own secure database. If we were hosting our site on something like Salesforce or Shopify, there would be ways for those service providers to see into our data. When we sell used holsters on eBay, eBay can see exactly what it was that we sold, and so can everybody else for that matter. But this database right here is secure. Now, some information, though, does have to come out. When you purchase the holster, there is a connection to financial services. It's going to be a card processor, a gateway, a card issuer, possibly a bank. Depending on how you have set things up, there's going to be information in publicly accessible or government accessible databases that money transfer happened. If that didn't exist, IRS wouldn't be able to get their cut. And then, in order for us to mail that holster for you, we're going to send it by some sort of parcel carrier, maybe the US Postal Service. So we give them address data, and they have some information about the package, your address. So now we have bits of information in multiple places. There's a little bit of information that has been stored by AT&T connecting your billing ID to their database. Maybe there's some Google stuff. Maybe there's just some data right here from your phone and your device. Possibly your location and the towers you're connected to, how many steps you took that day, your heart rate, just like super minor stuff, not invasive at all. Then there's the fact that you did connect to T-Rex Arms. Then there's the charge that was placed on your card or your direct bank, depending on how you have it set up. And then you have the shipment itself. That still doesn't reveal what it is that you purchased. To get this information down here, they have to actually send a subpoena or a warrant to us, and we have to interact with law enforcement directly. There are a number of steps for them to collect this evidence, and there's reasons why in a legitimate criminal case it would be good for them to have that evidence so that they could actually build a proper case. And when you put all of this information into a large government ID database that requires direct connections for different things, the way that this might be implemented in the future is through age verification. You've already seen this on American firearms websites. If you go to a website that sells guns, it will ask you if you are 18 years old. And right now, you can just click yes. That is fine. But in the future, there will be a desire to connect that to a digital identification server of some sort. So every time you visit this server, a new entry is created. And this database may have certain requirements to look into this server in order for us to continue doing business. Every firearm developer, every firearm seller, every firearm manufacturer in the country will be kind of on the hook to implement some of these features because we fit into this very special high-risk category. Actually, this is some of the lowest risk financial activity in the entire country, but arbitrarily, the government has determined that it is, in fact, high risk. then anytime that you do any of this other stuff, that data is going to come down here too. There's no reason why the U.S. Postal Service wouldn't want to verify these things. Your bank should talk directly to the system as well to confirm that it's you. This reduces fraud. Now all of the information about your activities lives in a single database that can be really easily searched. Now, right now, the system where you have to go to all these different places that are capturing data and request that data is, it's a lot of private information that is being collected, but the way that it gets collected still has some significant hurdles to it. And the process is difficult enough that it prioritizes resources a certain way. Once you have everything in a single database that can be searched with no communication to any of these entities, it can be searched without any oversight, without any transparency to how it's happening, opportunities for misuse pop up. But I'm not just talking about specific injustices and misuse. I'm talking about kind of a general understanding of how this system should work. I was talking to the founders of Give, Send, Go, and they have noticed a shift in the way that law enforcement officers think about this kind of private information collected by different people as time has gone on. They have a fundraising site, and they collect a huge amount of interest from law enforcement agencies, often from other countries, that want to collect data on the people that contribute funds to specific fundraising causes. The Canadian truck drivers, for example, were using Give, Send, Go, and the Canadian government tried very hard to shut down those protesters. Significant effort was spent on that particular endeavor. And when Give, Send, Go gets requests from information from law enforcement, often there is no warrant, often there is no subpoena, there is just an expectation that this information should be available to them, and not information about someone that has an ongoing criminal investigation with probable cause. Just data should be harvested from these services so that they can have it for potential use in putting down, maybe protesting truck drivers. Once you get rid of some of these checks and balances, some of these hurdles, some of this friction, you get rid of some of the expectations that people have about expectations for privacy, or the presumption of innocence, the idea that the government should ask permission before they have access to some of this information. And you replace it with an idea that we should be asking the government permission to even do some of these activities in the first place. Now, up until now, I have talked about all the ways in which this will fail, 5 big problems that will come about if the government entities involved are merely incompetent instead of malevolent. And I think this is very fair and unbiased on my part. However, I also think that this fairness is kind of unfairly fair, because I believe that in the year 2025, we now have enough data that we can guess the larger intent of the government of the United Kingdom at this point. My speculations about mission creep and sort of preliminary preemptive policing are not things that I assume will happen in a vacuum. These are things that the guys making the actual pitch for the service are mentioning.
Live video from body cams and CCTVs can be used to provide real-time advice to officers from a command center or deploy resources to where they're most needed. AI will go even further, spotting crime patterns, guiding patrols, and streamlining decisions. This is where technology, like digital ID, becomes critical.
In the last 20 years, since their last failed attempt to create a centralized digital citizen identifying system, the UK has imported a very large number of immigrants. And as a result, they have created a number of social and cultural and economic problems. These problems are the justification for creating the entire digital ID system, but they are also problems that demonstrate an underlying attitude that can give us some insight into how this digital ID system will be used. As of right this moment, when I am recording this video, a British citizen named Tommy Robinson is on trial today. Now, his crime is terrorism. It isn't exactly a real crime, but he has violated the Terrorism Act by not giving his phone to the government. The reason the government wants his phone is that on it are the contact details for critics of the government. I think there's a really good Alexander Solzhenitsyn quote that is appropriate here. A Marxist system is recognized by the fact that it spares the criminals and criminalizes its political opponents. There has long been a complaint in the UK that there is a two-tiered system of law and policing. The perpetrators of horrific violent acts go free, and the noticers of these acts are punished. Even sharing a meme on an American social media platform can get you some serious jail time in the United Kingdom. The government of the United Kingdom is no longer acting in the interests of its citizens, but only in its large collective government self. Violent criminals are not really prioritized because they're only a threat to individual citizens. But wrongthink, as I believe it is called, that's a threat to the government itself. That is why there is this emphasis on preemptive policing, tracking, monitoring, rather than finding justice for actual identifiable victims. And so as a result, British citizens in general are becoming victims. And I'm honestly not sure exactly what happens next. Over the last several years, we've seen the British people voting for things like Brexit, and they didn't really get Brexit the way that they asked for it. They have voted for an end to immigration, but neither of the governments that they have put into power to solve this problem have done anything about it. And I believe that the British people are going to vote against the digital ID. But it's not 2006 anymore, and they probably can't stop it from being made national policy. Not because of the elected officials themselves, but the larger bureaucratic system that is in favor of this system and will put it into place.
These nations aren't just adopting new technology. They are reimagining how the state itself works.
Which brings up a pretty complicated but necessary question. What exactly is a nation? Is a nation the people who reside inside of a nation's borders, who own the land and control the government that upholds the laws of that nation? Or is the nation the government itself, which owns the people as just some kind of possession? The citizenry are serfs who just provide the necessary revenues to keep the government running and pay for projects like digital ID. This is a question that citizens need to ask themselves before they allow the government too many powerful tools, particularly tools that lend themselves only to subjugation. Some of you are probably wondering why the T-Rex Arms Labs channel has spent so long talking about an issue happening in the UK when we're obviously an American channel dedicated to helping American citizens. Well, in the first place, I believe that some of the trends, some of the ideas, some things that are being developed in the EU and the UK are only a few years away from arriving here in the United States, whether those are government implementations or cultural and social things. But the other issue is that I've just spent a lot of time reading English law and English founding documents, and it's pretty tragic to see how far that country has fallen when it comes to the defense and proclamation of freedom and of liberty. We just republished at T-Rex Arms a book called The Path of Liberty, and it follows some of these documents. It starts at the very beginning in the year 1880 when Alfred the Great was building common law for England and trying to figure out what is a nation. How do we make England a nation? And from there you see this chain of documents. The Magna Carta lays out limited government and irremovable rights of citizens. The Assizes of Arms places the rights and responsibilities of being armed on the citizenry. Throughout history, you see one document leading to another document, leading to another document. And sometimes these are course corrections as the nation starts to stray off of the path of liberty. And as the book goes on, we get to the American colonies being found. And many of these documents that lead one to another really put into place these strong principles that define what a nation is, What are the responsibilities of the government? What are the limits of the government? And how is it that citizens can restrain the government from heading off in these alternative directions and maintain this clear path of liberty? So it's been very much on my mind, and yeah, we've got more books coming.